Hi, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut. Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are ready to see the end of what has actually been quite literally about a flawless mission. I'm really excited here because today is obviously the return of Artemis-1 that we saw launch just, 26 days ago or so. I hope everything's working. It's been a while since I've used this system here. But the good news is, my friends, is everything is looking absolutely fantastic for us. A splashdown of the Orion capsule that launched on top of SLS just less than a month ago at Kennedy Space Center. Now, I do have to point out our overlay is a little bit off. The time is correct. That countdown is not really a T countdown, but you know what it means. It means that's when we expect the splashdown to occur in pretty much just over 1 hour. But the location is incorrect. It's not going to be landing back at launch pad. I haven't been able to change it. We have this new system, and I got all fluttered, and I'm incapable. I am a goon. So I'm unable to do that. Hopefully that will change here in a second. And also the time. You'll notice it says like Pacific Standard Time. That's incorrect. That's showing local, like central time for me, which is also the same with Houston. But it is not the Pacific Standard Time that you might be used to. So I apologize for that. Just overlook it and I'm sorry. Also, yeah, this is a mission that I'm now very much looking forward to because you can kind of watch a lot of what's happened here and then picture the fact that I'm going to be doing something a lot like this. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I still honestly can't even believe it. Yeah, for those of you unaware, I'm sure most of you know by now, but I have been chosen to go to the moon, go around the moon, with the Dear Moon project, which is something that has been in the works for about 6 years. I've been following it since day one, since it was announced on February 27th, 2017. I am still, a long time later, still quite shocked that this is the turn of events of my life. I never in a billion years would have ever imagined that. And yeah, here we are coming up on a new era where someone like me can get chosen to fly around the moon. I mean, that's just absolutely 100% absurd. Obviously I have complete faith that this program will work out. I think, you never know with timing of spaceflight events. As we know, we all are used to delays, SLS delays. I mean, everything gets delayed and pushed back. So obviously I've got a little bit of my patience pants on, which I do with everything in spaceflight. But I have a lot of faith in this actually working out, because it's been in the works for a long time, and SpaceX has always delivered on their big promises. So yeah. All right. Let's get into something. Countdown is much too small. Well, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it right now. But let's do a few things here, guys, right away. I want to let you know we did actually make an article about this mission. If you head on over to everydayastronaut.com, you can click. This isn't technically an upcoming launch, so we have it under like posts and articles, I believe. But this is the Artemis-1 post-launch reviews. You might actually be able to find it under previous launches, because it's kind of this weird area where we're like talking about an event that's after the launch, so it's one of those things here that's a little different. But estimated splashdown time is December 11th. That is today, 1740 UTC time. which will make it 25 days, 10 hours, and 53 minutes long mission duration. So yeah, this is the mission name. This is Artemis-1. As I hope you guys know, it's the biggest launch of the year by far. So far, probably the biggest. Yeah, I'm not going to say so far. It is the biggest launch of my lifetime, physically, and I think metaphorically, as far as profoundness, this is definitely up there. I think, James Webb, Hubble are probably pretty major ones in my lifetime as well. But this is up there. This is way, way, way up there, especially once humans get on board for Artemis-2. Then I think that'll definitely take the cake. So, yeah, the launch provider for this is NASA. Which also for the launch included Boeing, Aerojet Rocketdyne for the engines, Boeing the core of the SLS, Northrop Grumman for the boosters and the launch escape system, and a United Launch Alliance for the actual second stage. But of course, Lockheed Martin with this specific spacecraft is kind of the Lockheed Martin and the European Space Agency with Thales Space made up the service module. So the rocket is the Space Launch System, Launch Complex. Again, a lot of this is kind of review of what happened, but we also went into this article of how it all went. But just for a fun reminder, this was the first launch of the Space Launch System. This was the second launch of the Orion spacecraft, third overall flight over the Orion spacecraft, because it had an abort test. 161st orbital launch of 2022. The furthest a spacecraft for crew have ever been from the Earth. And of course, Scott Manley pointed out, I don't remember which Apollo spacecraft, the lunar module got jettisoned and is actually out orbiting the sun now. But we'll say there's two other qualifiers we could add to this. We could say the furthest spacecraft for a crew will have ever been from Earth and returned. How about that? Or the furthest from Earth any spacecraft has ever been while under controlled flight, while still within its mission duration. How about that? Because when when they let go of the lunar lander, the lunar ascent module in the Apollo program, at that point after that, it's defunct. It's no longer online. It's no longer part of the mission. So what happens to it after that? I don't think that counts. Yes, it had humans in it at one point. Yes, it ended up getting ejected very far from Earth, further from Earth than this, but I don't think that really counts. Like space junk, I don't know. Do we count that as furthest a spacecraft for crew? Anyway, yeah, those are the qualifiers, I guess, if we want to be super pedantic about it. Most powerful rocket in the world at the time of launch, depending on how you count Starship. Also, depending on, most powerful operational rocket, I guess, because obviously, traveled over 2 million kilometers. Will re-enter total. That's as far as its total path for Orion. It'll re-enter at 40,000 kilometers, almost exactly 24,500 miles an hour. Re-entry temperatures will reach about 3,000 Kelvin. We always use this half as hot as the surface of the sun and some other sun reference, but it's so funny when we do that. I'm guilty of this. Trust me. I've done this in many videos. The temperature of the plasma is about as hot as the surface of the sun. Well, you can kind of say that about anything because the surface of the sun has so many different temperatures depending on specifically where you're at, at any given moment. So you could kind of be that's as hot as the surface. That is too, and that's half as hot. I don't know. It's just sort of I don't think we define that very well, personally. Okay, closest approach to furthest distance from Earth was 480,000 kilometers, so almost 300,000 miles, which is the furthest crew-rated spacecraft has been from Earth. Closest approach to the moon was only 80 miles, 128 kilometers, which is awesome. The imagery from that, as you likely know, are phenomenal. But yeah, we have some kind of the mission timeline, things that have gone on, such as the transit into the distant retrograde orbit, the onbound orbital insertion, the DR exiting the distant retrograde orbit. This is a unique orbit that is really interesting. As I saw a video, Scott Manley made a video where he showed when it's compared to the moon, it almost looks like a square. The orbit around the moon, it almost looks like a square because of how it's pulled still by Earth. It's a three-body system, so you have the Earth and the moon, and then your spacecraft, and you have all of the gravitational effects of those bodies. It's just really complicated. The reentry timeline, here's what we're expecting here. The crew module will separate right at about when this clock says 11 a.m. That's when the crew module service will separate. I'll pull up the videos here in a second, by the way, and we'll watch. I'm probably going to shut up and pretty much just listen the whole time and try to answer some questions. Yeah, so crew module will separate. That's the spacecraft, you know, and then it has the service module attached to it. That will have to separate to expose the heat shield of the spacecraft. So when it re-enters, it enters heat shield first. It doesn't have propellant tanks and things like that in front of it. That could obviously blow up and damage and be very bad. Then 20 minutes after that, we expect the crew module to begin entering the atmosphere. At 35 minutes after crew module separation, it'll get down to an altitude of only 12 kilometers. And this is after there is a skip entry, so it's actually going to pop back up out of the atmosphere a little bit. And it's really cool because it takes some pretty fancy computers and pretty fancy guidance and mission planning to be able to do this. But what it allows is very precise landing. So what they can do is they can basically come in at the atmosphere, kind of have this portion of the atmosphere that'll help bleed off a good chunk of the velocity. They can change. It does two things. It kind of first actually physically skips almost like a stone. A little bit off the atmosphere, but they can also shift the lift vector. Believe it or not, the Orion capsule actually has a little bit of a lift vector in it, and they can do that just by rotating the vehicle. So all they have to do is spin it, and then that lift vector changes. So it's hard to explain with my hands, and I'm doing a terrible job. But what they can do is allow them to precisely touch down, splashdown. That's something that they didn't really have during the Apollo program. They could have physically, but it was actually considered riskier and not really worth it. Nowadays with modern computers and guidance and stuff, it's no big deal, which means that the recovery efforts are a lot easier. It means they don't have to spend nearly as much effort finding the vehicle because it's going to splash down in a much more precise and controlled manner. Then we have the forward bay, the chute jettison, the drogue chute deploy, main chute, and drogue chute jettison splashdown. There you go. So, and this is the 50th anniversary too, by the way, of Apollo 17 on the moon. So that's pretty wild. But there you go. This is kind of the overview here. I think at this point we should probably just tune in to the official live stream that's going on so you guys don't get bored with me. And if you want to read more about this, everydayastronaut.com. This is written by Trevor. Thank you so much to Trevor for writing up this article, so we had something to go through today. That's also we also have 15% off of our translunar collection because obviously this is translunar. It went out to the moon, came back. So these items in our shop today are 15% off if you want. I don't know if it'll make it there by the holidays. It might, but no guarantees. But we know we have like our lunar lander button-up shirt, little tiny lunar landers on it, which I just love. RS-25 shirts, the lunar mission shirt, and lunar lamp too. So if you want to help support what I do, head on over to everydayastronaut.com/shop. Shop around in the translunar collection right there on the home screen, and get something for yourself or a loved one. Yeah. All right, let's tune in here. Looks like they're in the middle of an interview, so actually I'll take. Here we go. Let's listen in here, see what they're talking about, and we can always get caught up live. Give me that live.
That debris happens during the separation of the forward bay cover, which covers the parachutes, and then of course the parachutes and their hardware themselves. All of it together, they take in the winds, and you can feel the winds are picking up a little bit. That wind data will give us refined information and data in order to calculate exactly the landing spot. Now, we're not alone out here in the Pacific Ocean. We do have friends helping us today, and I want to take a shot now of a ship off in the distance that has joined us for today's operation, and that is the USS Montgomery. That ship is just a few miles away, as you can see it there. The USS Montgomery is providing security today. It is what the Navy calls a littoral ship. It specializes in close-to-shore combat. It's highly maneuverable in that space. Today, though, it has a peaceful mission, and that is to provide security to this location during splashdown. So for the public safety, to prevent boats from coming in and around the area, as well as provide additional eyes to the sky in tracking Orion crew module as it comes down. You can see a little bit of a bounce there, and that's caused by the seas that we are currently experiencing, which are in the range of 4 to 5 feet. Those seas, closely tracked by our NASA team with a wave management system, wave monitoring system rather, they are closely monitoring the seas for the moment where we bring the Orion capsule into the well deck. That is a highly choreographed and very dynamic operation. With the seas being what they are, when those waves come into the well deck, it can create a very dynamic environment with waves splashing back and forth inside the well deck, and teams on ropes trying to stabilize Orion to get it in just the right position here on the ship to then allow the well deck to drain out, have the Orion crew module put in place for its ride back to San Diego.
So there's a little update, a question that somebody had that I think is a good one to answer while we're talking about the waves and the weather, from Josh Wilson. What would happen if the weather wasn't within ideal parameters? Doesn't seem like there's a point where they'd be able to make a change in splashdown time if a weather system moved in. Congrats on Dear Moon. Thank you very much. So there actually was. There's a few points where they were targeting the options of where exactly to splash on. And in fact, this trajectory, they're going to be landing, I believe, about 300 kilometers short of the initial landing zone because of weather. And that's something they can do, that skip reentry. So I think it was about 2 days ago, is when they set exactly which landing zone they're going to be aiming for. And then within that landing target, once they say, hey, we're going to be going up the west coast of the United States, up the Baja coast in California, because it's kind of coming in from south. It's kind of coming in almost like a polar orbit. Once they had that targeted, they could actually change how, how far downrange, because of that skip reentry really helps them be able to dynamically target something. So they have this big, long, several hundred long kilometer stretch where they can literally target anywhere along that. You're not gonna be able to change left and right very much. It's very, you're coming in so fast and so hot that the main thing you can change is your distance, parallel to your relative travel. So you can't go east or west in this case. It's more or less like north and south. They can control very precisely how much they can do that. So let's keep listening in here, and we'll try to answer a few more guys' questions too.
Launched on November 16th, just 26 days ago. So we know that one of the primary test objectives of this mission is to make sure that this heat shield at the bottom of the crew module is able to safely bring our astronauts home from deep space. Now, for reference, when we bring astronauts home from the International Space Station, they're coming in at about 17,000 miles per hour. But today, Orion is coming in at 25,000 miles per hour. So we're coming in way hotter, way faster than we have done before. So we need some new heat shield technology. And we also need some additional hardware in order to slow us down and make that really happen. So let's talk about what that looks like. So this forward segment of the Orion crew module is called the forward bay cover. And this section is actually designed to completely be pulled off by 3 parachutes. So we have 3 parachutes that's going to pull that off. We have 2 drogue parachutes that are going to come out after that to slow us down a bit. We have 3 pilot parachutes that are going to pull our mains out. And then the stars of the show are 3 main parachutes that measure up to 116 feet in diameter each. So that gives us 11 parachutes that it takes to get us safely back home. So now that we know a little bit about what that hardware looks like, we can take a look at what that journey actually looks like. So, as we know, we had a 7-day return transit, and as we approached the Earth, the service module and the crew module separated from one another, and the service module is going to burn up in the atmosphere above the Pacific
That's going to be in
Ocean.
about 10 minutes.
As that happens, the Orion crew module is going to use its reaction control thrusters to do a 180 flip and point that heat shield towards the atmosphere as we target re-entry. So a really important phase here is entry interface. This is at an altitude of about 400,000 feet, and this is where we define a lot of our entry conditions, such as the flight path angle and the velocity. Now this is really important because if you come in at too shallow of an angle, you may bounce right off the atmosphere and not even re-enter. But if you come in too steeply, you're going to experience forces that are beyond the design of your spacecraft. So what we're going to do today is actually toe the line and
one second, I'm hearing some crackles here.
where we're actually going to bounce off once.
Do a little
that
test
allows
to
us
see
to
if
have a
it's something on
steeper
my end.
re-entry, and that actually increases the heating, allowing us to really test the capability of that heat shield.
Some settings.
And we will also be minimizing the G loading, which leads to a softer ride for the Moonican and in the future for our Artemis astronauts. Now, once we do that, the atmosphere is going to slow us down pretty significantly, but we'll still be going over 300 miles per hour. And then we will slow down to 20 miles per hour after that sequence of 11 parachute deployments. Now, once we splash down west of California, we will have these red inflatables that will make sure that no matter what orientation we hit the water at, we will be right side up. And then the USS Portland is going to recover the capsule and bring it back to the U.S. Naval Station in San Diego. Now, there's a really large team comprised of U.S. Navy, Air Force, NASA, contractors who worked really hard to prepare for today. So I am super excited to see them welcome Orion home. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Philip. We are coming up on the critical stuff leading up to Orion's return to Earth and its splashdown in the Pacific, just 7 minutes away now from crew module, service module separation. That European service module has worked like a champ throughout the course of the mission. The service module, which of course housed the solar arrays and all of the other propulsive functions.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to try just refreshing and trying a different source just to make sure it's correct. Oh, this is the, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do here about that. Maybe just a little refresh. You never know. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to try cleaning this up because I don't like that. I can't stand that kind of stuff. I think it sounds better to me now.
Receiving reports from Flight Director Judd Freeling and his team of flight controllers throughout Orion's descent back into the Earth's atmosphere and through all of the parachute deployment sequence events leading up to splashdown that is scheduled at 11:39 and 9:39 and 42 seconds a.m. Pacific time. One thing worth noting is once Orion splashes down in the Pacific, it will stabilize in one of two positions, either pointed up, which is called stable 1, or pointed down in stable 2. The crew module uprighting system, known as the CMUS, deploys a series of 5 bright orange helium-filled bags on the top of the capsule that will either flip Orion right side up or keep it right side up in its stable 1 position. Those 5 bags are packed in hard containers and installed atop the capsule inside the structural gussets between the parachutes and other equipment. They're inflated with helium gas that is stored in pressure vessels located close by the bags. Each bag has its own independent inflation system. The CMUS, or crew module uprighting system, initiates after landing. And opens up in a stable 1 configuration for Orion. Divers to approach the vehicle. One of the first things that they'll be looking for is any leakage of toxic gas or toxic fuel from the vehicle. Assuming there is no such leak and that Orion appears to be in good shape, then they'll begin the methodical process of approaching the vehicle with other personnel and other Navy assets in order to begin the securing of Orion on the ocean for its towing back into the well deck of the USS Portland.
Are we back? Let me know if I'm back. Hopefully everything's okay. Would it be an Everyday Astronaut live stream if we didn't have some ridiculously just random thing? At least our launch coverage was for once quite solid. Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you. I did want to, let's answer a few more questions as we get close here to seeing some of the stuff actually happen. Actually, we're expecting the crew module, the service module and the crew module to separate here any second. So I am going to listen to mission control audio, but I will say thank you to the well wishes.
Now just 1 minute away from crew module, service module separation. We'll be standing by for confirmation of that from the mechanical systems officer here at Mission Control.
This is obviously a pretty big milestone. They have to get the service module disconnected for sure, and it does that using some pyrotechnics. There's actually some explosive bolts that basically let go of the vehicle. And don't worry, those bolts.
30 seconds until separation. This will come at an altitude of 3,200 statute miles.
Those bolts will actually be re-entering. I know people are always worried about pyrotechnics and space debris, but because the vehicle's already on a re-entry trajectory, anything it does at this point, explosive bolts
10
included,
seconds until set.
Will just re-enter.
We have confirmation of separation. Orion flying on its own.
That's great news.
Again, the separation occurred right on time at 11 a.m. and 11 seconds Central Time, with Orion 3,200 statute miles away from Earth.
I'm a little confused what the animation is doing now.
The service module, the European service module, has done its job.
Okay, now that we know that that's been corrected, I'm going to try again switching. I'm just going to try switching. There's two official NASA feeds. I'm going to try switching that for you guys just to see if that one sounds better. I don't know, maybe if... Which one was I actually in? That was the Splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. Okay, let's just try the official stream of NASA TV. It's going to be the same thing, but hopefully it doesn't have that audio glitch. So just give me 1 second here. We'll see if my hypothesis is correct. We'll now have to wait for some audio to come through. Oh, that's awesome. Steve Muir, thank you so much for 25 months.
So with Orion flying on its own, we're about 18 and a half minutes away now from the point of entry interface, where Orion will be put through its paces. This is where the heat shield will begin to feel the effects of peak heating of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit on the heat shield, and the beginning of 2 blackout periods where the plasma around the vehicle will build up such that it will block data and communications between mission control and the spacecraft itself.
And just a heads up too, his particular audio is actually very grainy, and it's not a preamp mic. It's like the actual in-console mics, so they don't have a nice preamp and stuff. It does sound like it's coming through the comms channel, which it quite literally is. But it's still, it sounds kind of old school and stuff, but I don't hear that glitch anymore. So I think that's just now when we get back to Daryl, when Daryl's on the boat, he's got a proper microphone setup. It should sound just fine. I think now we're on to the normal audio, unless you guys are hearing something that I'm not at this point. But it went away from me, what I was hearing. So I do have their audio going. This is a good question, though. Again, remember, you don't have to do super chats to get your questions answered. We'll look for good questions, and if it's something I might know the answer to, I'll try to answer to it. And this one, I don't know if I know 100% specifically, but this is a great question from Gerd, asking, can I ask why they only attached a GoPro Hero 4 to the Orion spacecraft, but not a later one like Hero 10 or 9? To be honest, I think it fully comes down to you can tell how old Orion is based on the age of the GoPros. At some point, they had to do a design freeze. You can't, you know, a lot of planning goes into putting every single, you know, piece into this vehicle. If something were to change between even the GoPro 4 and the 5 and 6, you know, different Bluetooth signature, different Wi-Fi chip, different anything, they'd have to kind of recertify that for the entire thing. So at some point, they just literally had to freeze the design, even though there are better designs. There's much better GoPros now than a GoPro 4. When they designed the vehicle and they certified all the pieces for this flight, they did it with the GoPro 4, which I'm assuming at the time was about the best at the time. And Ben Steinman mentioned GoPros also stopped having the native HDMI put after Hero 7, so that's a good point as well.
Angle to begin the repulsion of the heat that will build up around the heat shield at the time that we begin entry interface, just about 15.5 minutes from now. So the crew module service module separation went off as planned. The raise maneuver was executed at 11:03 and 41 seconds Central Time. Again, the raise maneuver was executed. Orion now flying at the proper orientation for entry interface into the Earth's atmosphere. Entry interface is scheduled at 11:20 and 14 seconds a.m.
Weird. Okay, so it sounds like you guys are still hearing an audio glitch. Now I do not hear it, so that's even more confusing for me, because if I could hear it before and you couldn't, then that was like, oh, that makes sense. Let me try one more thing. There's a little a MIDI sync to make sure that the devices are having drift correction. Let me just turn that on and off quick. That might help alleviate things. Sorry about this, guys. I hate when stuff like this happens. Especially when... Oh, here we go. Is this...
Just a reminder that after we pass into the Earth's atmosphere, at the speed at which we're going, and with the temperatures expected to build up very quickly for peak heating around the heat shield of Orion, we will begin the first of two blackout periods, the first of which is scheduled to begin at 11:20 and 16 seconds a.m. Central Time and will last about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. At that time, entry guidance...
This is a good question from Daniel Thornton. Will we be able to see re-entry from Northern California? No. Even if you're in the Baja California or south of San Diego, you very likely will not be able to see anything because it's daylight. If this were night, maybe you'd have a better chance, but it is also very far away. Like it's very far south and very far west of most populated areas. I think there's a chance under the right conditions you would be able to see it. And if you knew exactly where you're looking and you're in the exact right place, you might be able to see it during the day, aka NASA with tracking assets. I'm sure they're going to be obviously tracking it for valuable imagery data. But human eyes, I don't think there's any chance of anyone seeing it, unfortunately. Yeah.
a.m. Central Time, and that will last for about 2 minutes and 55 seconds till about 11:31 and change. That'll be the final blackout period, after which we should lock up solidly for the remaining 8 minutes or so until splashdown.
Yeah, don't get seasick watching the boat, guys. Let's see. This is a good question, actually. P-51 Mustang Flyer. I actually don't know. I think I'm 99% sure it does go back to San Diego, where it'll be offloaded. And then I think it goes to... It either goes back to the Lockheed facilities, and I think it goes back to the Lockheed facilities in Denver. Does anyone in chat or in Discord know the answer to that specifically? Because I would be curious where it goes after that. I'm 99% sure it goes back to San Diego, because that's where the ship is at port. And then I'm guessing that it takes off and goes.
This is Mission Control Houston, 12 minutes away from entry interface. Everything is going by the book so far here in Mission Control. Very quiet on the loops. Entry Flight Director Judd Freeling and his team of flight controllers watching carefully over their data as they oversee the arrival of Orion for its splashdown site west of Baja, California. Time to splash down 31 minutes.
Okay, this is a good question here. What's the difference between the recovery of spacecraft after splashdown? Why does NASA need to flood the recovery ship and float Orion in? Can't they just lift it out of the water like SpaceX? You know, all of those design decisions just come down to how each team decides to, design recovery. And at one point, I'm sure they just had this idea, they could partner with the Navy, and they have those boats that can, kind of do the flooding of the lower deck there, and they could just kind of back up over, Orion and drain it out. And it probably seemed like a really simple solution because there's already those assets out there. They didn't have to custom design too much stuff or anything. It's just kind of pretty much an off-the-shelf solution. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, obviously that boats and the recovery personnel for it are quite expensive. And SpaceX is pretty quick and nimble for things. So as you know, SpaceX, like he's mentioned, they just go up to the Dragon capsule and literally just pull it out and put it right on the deck with a relatively small boat and a relatively small crew. Why they didn't do that, I'm guessing it seemed more complicated to have to build all the lifts and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Excess energy, excess inertia, and speed, and control the thermal characteristics of the vehicle as it heads towards its subsonic point, where it will go under Mach 1. It will go subsonic at about 11:34 and 55 seconds a.m. Central Time, some 5 minutes before splashdown. If everything goes as planned, Orion will reach an altitude of 40,000 feet at 11:35 a.m. Central Time, just about a minute before forward bay cover chute deploy
I did see
begins. The series.
A good comment. Yes, so in general, Orion is quite a bit larger than Dragon, quite a bit heavier, almost twice as heavy, a good 70% heavier than Dragon. But you could obviously assume that if they wanted to, design a system similar to SpaceX, they could scale up the whole system with a larger recovery boat and a larger lift and do something similar. But kind of back to the original question, why? I think it more came down to what assets were available with the least amount of modification. I'm guessing. Let's see. This is a good question from Abdulhak. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. After splashdown, can the spacecraft be reused? Was wondering what happens to the vehicle after it's completed its mission. So they are reusing I believe it's 8 or 10 aviation boxes from Orion 1 for Orion 2. They're also reusing the seat that the mannequin, Moonikin Skywalker, I believe is what they named it. I already forgot. But yeah, they are reusing the seat as well for Artemis 2. But other than that, really no other. And also, actually, it's funny, that was asked during a press conference, but they made it seem like that was it. But also, I believe the actual GPS receivers, the star tracker, and a few other components are also being expected to be reused for Artemis 2. Of course, my biggest question, and the one thing I just absolutely do not understand, is why does why are they reusing Artemis-1 hardware for Artemis 2 when that's going to be causing a 27-month delay between missions to be able to do that, instead of building out Artemis 2 and reusing hardware from Artemis-1 for Artemis 3? That seems to me like what I would do. If they obviously have the new hardware for Artemis and backup hardware, assuming, what if this didn't go well? What if they lost the vehicle? They have backups.
Over the South Pacific at the moment, moving from south to north. Just 7.5 minutes until entry interface.
Cool. And yes, just again, remember the time here is off and we can't quite fix it. Let me see if we can. We'll see if we can. But it is a technical issue on my end. Thank you so much to Adolf and Snow181 for your memberships. Those are much, much appreciated. let's see here. Does this is from I like this. My question is more simple, and then it goes into the TDRS network or other networks not support video feeds from the capsule or service module for milestone events like separation. It's all about, at this point, it's all really about the ground tracking stations and ground tracking coverage. Hold on.
It will soon, when it shows the forward bay cover jettisoning and the initiation of the parachute deployment system. Entry interface less than 6.5 minutes from now.
Kind of appears you can still see some bits of debris after the separation event floating there through that window. That window is looking relatively up, so that'll be able to see the parachutes to get deployed. So yeah, to your answer, there are potential for spots where you can get this. I don't think TDRS can be used. There's so many things that go into all this stuff, and I don't know all the answers off the top of my head at all. But there's so many different things that go into this.
Just to recap,
there probably was a decent chance we could have got a video feed of the separation, but maybe there's also a black zone between TDRS and the ground tracking stations, ground stations to be able to do that. But yeah, this is from RL. Why does NASA land in the far out Pacific compared to SpaceX landing close to land? Well, the original plan was to land much closer to San Diego, but because of bad weather conditions, they waved that off, and now we're having to land further south. But they'd already chosen. You basically can't change the longitudinal line too much. You really can only change at this point your latitude, like how far north or south it goes. So in order to target better weather, they targeted further south, and the recovery forces will have to go there. This is still much better than during the Apollo era when they had fleets of ships like all throughout the Pacific Ocean that might be hours and hours and hours away. But we do have the capability nowadays to land much, much closer to land. But yeah, like I said, mostly due to weather concerns, I think they had to target a different site. Yeah. This is a good question from Blue Jacket Warrior. Are there stable 1 and stable 2 positions for Orion like there was Apollo? And congrats on Dear Moon. Thank you. If I recall, I think there's actually 3 stable positions for Orion. I'd have to look that up again. But yes, the vehicle has, inflatables, and it's naturally stable just because of its shape. It wants to land and face a certain orientation, generally heat shield down. But of course, you do risk that if it were to capsize and be upside down, it could hinder egress or getting out of the vehicle, could hinder recovery forces. So they do make sure there's these inflatable just kind of balloon things that ensure that it's in a stable position. So to your answer, I believe for sure there's at least 2 stable positions, but I feel like I remember 3 back from EFT1 even. Yeah. Let's see, let's keep going here. Is NASA able to control the vehicle from the ground, or is it all automated? This definitely all has to be automated. The vehicle, you could send certain commands or certain updates to the vehicle, but you can't fly it. There's too many blackouts in communications. The vehicle needs to be able to do all this stuff autonomously, which it is doing. Like I said, they might update like a course correction burn or give it the exact data on, what it needs to be doing and update some, little bits and things here, but they're not, so no one's sitting there with like a controller doing Kerbal Space Program on the most expensive vehicle ever. Realistically, yeah, it's entirely autonomous at this point.
Miles.
Let's see here.
Within seconds after reaching entry interface, we'll begin the first of the 2 blackout periods. That will last just under 5 minutes, about 4 minutes and 48 seconds.
Okay. Let's keep going here. It's just so fun. We're getting really close to it beginning to enter the atmosphere. And of course, that's kind of a relative thing. It's not like the atmosphere just starts and stops. It's like, it's a gradient, right? So, but at some point, it does start to experience some more substantial heating. And don't forget, this heat shield is ablative. So But it is a little bit different, actually. It's quite different than the Apollo heat shields. But it is ablative, so what that means is it will be kind of chewed away.
And here's the ground track for Orion as it passes well to the west of South America. We're just 1 minute, 44 seconds away from entry interface, moving from south to north to its splashdown target west of Baja California.
Why are there 2 blackout phases? So that kind of has to do with the skip entry. So while it's in its, you can actually see the altitude versus range predicted here. I assume this is the predicted one. Or that doesn't make sense. What is that showing? That is really hurting my head. Altitude versus range. That should go down. Relative velocity versus range. Again, that should go down. That chart was very confusing to me. I don't know if anyone understood that. I don't know why it's going up. You'd think it'd be doing the exact opposite. That was very confusing. Can we see that again with an explanation? But basically, the blackout periods are during those portions of extreme plasma, so during the actual reentry phase. So the first bit of the entry, and then it's going to poke back up out of the atmosphere there. It can cool off. It can also retarget and really precisely control its splashdown zone. At that point, it will be out of the blackout zone, and we'll be able to recommunicate, re-upload, and help share its status, which is a good thing at this point too, for sure, because if have God forbid something were to happen during the actual landing with the parachute and stuff, this would be another opportunity to upload data and help provide clues as to if something had gone wrong. So that is also a very good thing about the skip reentry. All right.
We are now in the entry phase. Entry interface has begun.
Fantastic.
Entry interface at 400,000 feet. Orion traveling just under 25,000 miles an hour.
So 40,000 kilometers an hour. And there's that blackout.
We've gone into the first blackout period. This is a visualization based on what should be happening at the moment, where the temperatures around the heat shield are reaching about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the moment of truth for Orion. We should be coming out of this first blackout period just under 4 minutes from now.
Not a silly question, Artemis-2. The
Orion
plan
should
is
be
to
traveling about 23,326 miles an hour at the moment.
The Artemis-2, the plan is to be crewed. There will be 4 astronauts on board Artemis-2. Yet to be announced astronauts, but I think they're pretty far along in the selection process for the NASA crew. But they have not said yet, and I don't think they're going to release it until this mission is successful.
Blackout period that should end about 3 minutes and 15 seconds from now. Once we emerge from this first blackout period, we'll conduct the skip entry maneuver that will further dissipate heat and energy and begin a very, very dramatic reduction in the velocity of Orion as it approaches its splashdown site.
Corona Kivo in our Discord asking why velocity is still going up. It is still falling, so until it is beginning to decelerate, but don't forget deceleration is just a change in velocity, so it's falling at 9.8 meters per second squared back towards the Earth. It might take a little while for that to get chewed back until it's totally into a full deceleration. So it might be slowing down, but it would still be speeding up. Does that make sense? Like, it might be the rate of slowing down will be lower at first, just because it's beginning to experience some resistance and some aerodynamic forces, which will make it start to slow down. But that, if it's still negative, it could still be a negative number, like minus 4 meters per second squared. Then minus 3.5. You're still going to be slowing down. You're still going to be speeding up, but by less. Does that make sense? Sorry if that's the worst explanation ever. Does that make sense? You can, like, just like on the moon, you can be falling towards the moon at a slower rate than you'd be falling towards Earth. So right now, until it gets to that point where it's actually really beyond and really truly slowing down, like below, you know, this is the worst explanation I've ever done in my entire life. Did I answer it at all? Or am I just totally... The acceleration is decelerating. I like that better. A Krusty Ham in Discord. That's a better way of saying it. The acceleration is decelerating, but it could still be accelerating towards the Earth. Does that make sense? So again, remember, just imagine 9.8 meters per second falling. Now all of a sudden you start to experience a little bit of atmospheric resistance and slowdown, but all of a sudden it will be like -9 meters per second and falling, -8 meters per second and falling. So the rate of what you're accelerating towards the Earth could be slowing down, but overall it's still actually speeding up. And it's not until it gets beyond that zero and beyond the point of terminal velocity, or initial terminal velocity, or whatever you'd consider that, where you start to get into the other side of things. It might start pulling 3 or 4 Gs, and then, you know, of proper deceleration. Then you'll see that number, you know, once you get beyond zero, then you'll see that number actually go down. Okay, did I do okay? Sorry.
Standing by for a reacquisition of signal.
And again, the acquisition of signal will be after its skip reentry, so it's going to be increasing in altitude here soon. Thank you very much, Peter, for your continued support. Oh, this is awesome. Those helicopters are from my squadron. We're on the hook for every Artemis recovery. That's so cool. I'll be on the Artemis-2 recovery mission. Joe, that is super, super cool. I love hearing that. There were 2 helicopters kind of on the very left hand of the screen. You see the ship deck there. There were 2 helicopters that are out for recovery. There's one there as a backup. So they take this pretty seriously. One of them is going to be kind of in control of looking for splashdown
and we
items.
have data from Orion. Orion out of the blackout period.
That's good news. So soon we should get that video feedback, hopefully. There we go.
Flight Dynamics reports that Orion is right on the money, coming right down the pike. A good view out of the cabin camera, looking out of the upper hatch of Orion.
Wow. Fantastic. This has just been so precise. It's been so precise they have so much extra margin.
We should be performing the skip entry maneuver momentarily. Good communications established with Orion.
Yeah, I was going to say we're probably going to lose it again. Second blackout period.
The second blackout period to begin about 2 minutes from now.
Now notice that it fired some roll thrusters, and so what that does is they can literally take. Now this is what I was trying to explain before. Let me try it again in a better way. So actually, no, let's do it with this. This mug's perfect. Hopefully it doesn't have anything in it, and I don't spill all over myself. No. Okay, mug. Pretend this is the heat shield. Pretend this is a lifting vector. So pretend you have your heat shield, and all you need is a center of mass slightly outside of the center of the vehicle. So let's pretend your center of mass is right here. So you could have offset mass from the circle. The heat shield is just basically a giant pizza with a little bit of a, or a lens, a contact lens. And then you just have a little bit of a weight. Actually, contact lenses have a little bit of a weight too, and that helps them kind of sink down to the bottom of your eye to keep it so, all the rotations are aligned correctly. Heat shield and the whole capsule is kind of that same way. The capsule is shaped like this, but the center of mass is not right down the center. They actually put it offset. What that means is there's actually a lifting vector. Kind of think about like riding a surfboard or a snowboard or something. You can kind of shift your weight on it, and that will help you kind of steer and control it. It's the same thing here. So all of a sudden you have this vector, and it will be able to kind of steer itself based on which direction that vector is pointing. So they can literally just roll the spacecraft, and it can dip down deeper. They can raise it up by, by having that lifting vector pointed up. They can go east or west relative to its point of reentry, and that's because of that offset center of mass. And this has actually been done for a long time. For sure, the Apollo capsules had it. I'm pretty sure Gemini had it too. I don't know if Mercury did, or probably Mercury. I'm assuming it's been done like this for ages. But you can do quite a bit with this. So that's actually, you saw the vehicle starting to roll. That was it controlling very precisely where it's going to re-enter. That's the thing with Orion compared to the Apollo program, is they can just really, really precisely control this stuff now. And they just have such better guidance and computational power on board the vehicle that it can truly, handle that kind of computing of like, I want to land here. The space shuttle did something similar with these big S-turns. So it was coming in through re-entry. It couldn't, break like this where it's entering like this. That'd make it go up too high and then all this stuff. So what it actually did was a series of S-turns, and it would kind of go like this and do these braking maneuvers to make sure there's precisely targeting and landing on, say it's going too fast, that's how you slow it down. But obviously they would overshoot it initially a little bit because you can't speed it back up. The shuttle it was a glider, it had no way. So we're used to it, and that required some pretty heavy computational power for the space shuttle to be able to do that on the fly, during the mission. So obviously this is 40 years after the space shuttle almost, coming up on that. And, obviously we have much more powerful computers yet, much better understanding of everything. And so it is really cool to see that, we're seeing much more precise guidance and control here. And I do love too in mission control, you can kind of see their cameras are trying to track the sky. They're scanning the sky, looking for where they expect to see the next event. So we are coming up on reentry, the final reentry, and we're only about 8 minutes away from expected splashdown. So we are coming up on the initial. There's going to be a cover that gets pulled off, or a thing that begins the first of 11 parachutes that will begin the deployment sequence. It's quite the deploy sequence. Let's listen in here.
This is Mission Control Houston, the airborne WB-57, one of the airborne assets to track Orion's return to Earth, has visual acquisition of the vehicle. We should be coming out of this second and final blackout about 30 seconds from now.
Here we go. This is it.
And helos flying off the deck of the USS Portland now have a visual acquisition of Orion as well, at an altitude of 174,000 feet, traveling 12,600 miles an hour, range to splashdown 288 statute miles.
So that's about 400 kilometers. I do expect to see the telemetry come back once they regain acquisition of signal of the vehicle.
This view on the deck of the USS Portland.
Oh, here we come.
And there is a view out of the cabin camera of Orion as it continues a series of role reversals. We have data back from the spacecraft. Flight Dynamics reports Orion straight and narrow on a true course toward its splashdown site.
Awesome.
Forward bay cover jettisoning less than 3.5 minutes from now.
So that's the thing that gets pulled off by, I think, 3 parachutes. A lot of that's redundancy.
150,000 feet off the ocean.
It's a cover that kind of keeps the parachute safe during the whole portion of flight up to this point. And then that gets pulled off first. Then you're going to have some drogue chutes come out. Then you're going to have, those will pull out some pilot chutes.
Orion now traveling at Mach 10.
For the main chutes. That is awesome view. I can't wait to see the high resolution of this stuff. Oh, that one's looking out one of the side windows, not looking straight up. I think. It's a little disorienting. Another roll maneuver. That is so cool.
Orion's speed now down to Mach 6.
Some might be asking why the
2 minutes until forward bay cover jettisoning.
Why it's not a flat Earth or a round Earth. It currently is a wave Earth. That would be the effects of a fisheye lens. We're all quite familiar with that. I'm sure all of us have used like a GoPro before where you can see lines get bent like this. What that means is even if you have a straight line, you can make it go weren't or weren't. Or if you have a curved line, you can make it straighten out or go inverted as well. So you do see some weird distortion because of the barrel distortion of wide-angle lens imagery, which is just kind of the thing you got to do, unfortunately, when you're looking to try to get as much data as possible and see as much as you can. It is quite common to use as wide of an angle as possible, and oftentimes instead of it being a rectilinear wide-angle lens, they go for a simple, fisheye lens. Although I wish rectilinear was more common. So yeah, to answer a good question here, Rocket Art in our Discord, do they roll so the heat shield is evenly cooked? No, the heat shield actually generally quite evenly. It's not like it's doing a barbecue roll thing to keep the heat shield. The heat shield is, all of it's pretty much getting a relatively similar impact of atmospheric reentry. So by rolling, there might be some relief on certain spots compared to others minusculely, but most of that's due to that center of mass. They're actually rolling to steer. They're 50,000 feet. So parachutes are going to be deployed at about 10 kilometers. They're at 50,000, so they're at like, what, 17?
Forward bay covered jettisoning pyros are armed.
So we should get ready to see kind of a big thing any second.
$25,000 feet.
There we go.
Drogues have been deployed.
Wait, did I miss the forward bay cover doors already?
Two good drogue chutes reported by the recovery team out in the Pacific. The descent rate is right on the money. Orion's velocity now down to 282 miles an hour. Range to splashdown 1.5 miles.
So about 400 kilometers an hour.
10,000 feet now.
And yes, there are only two drogue chutes. It goes 3, 2, 3, 3. So next we'll see 3 pilot chutes. So there goes the drogues. And there's the mains.
And we're on mains. 5,000
Awesome.
feet.
How many thousand feet?
Reefing in progress.
That's looking pretty good. That's looking good. Wow.
Three good main chutes for Orion.
Yes. Yes.
We have 3 fully inflated main chutes.
Wow.
Time to splashdown 90 seconds.
They're pretty much right on with the initial targeted time.
Perfect descent rate reported.
Wow. That looks fantastic. Impressive. I had to bring up something real quick because a lot of people ask, how is this any different than Apollo? And didn't we do this 50 years ago? Quite literally, yes. Come to find out in retrospect, the Apollo program was extremely dangerous. Like, way higher risk than I think NASA's willing to accept these days in so many aspects. And even things like, there we go, shot of the main chutes under descent. That is beautiful.
To ride to the moon and beyond now in view.
Fantastic.
Orion under its chutes descending towards splashdown.
Wow. And yes, it does have parachute out capabilities. I believe it can land within a safe
Orion in the
speed.
perfect orientation for splashdown, just seconds away.
Don't forget, there's quite a big lag between this imagery going through the cloud or whatever system they're using to then get it back down to the
1,000
studios.
feet.
1,000 feet, so 300 meters.
Good descent rate.
Still haven't seen the ocean yet.
500 feet.
Okay, so what is that? 150 meters? Here we go. There we go.
Splashdown. From Tranquility Base to Taurus Littrow to the tranquil waters of the Pacific, the latest chapter of NASA's journey to the moon comes to a close. Orion, back on Earth. Unofficial splashdown time, 11:40 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time.
Wow. Wow. That looked absolutely...
Time of 25 days, 10 hours, 54 minutes, 50 seconds. That's unofficial. Splashing down off the coast of Baja, California.
Wow. So kind of back to what I was saying, though, about the Apollo program and why, why is this so much harder today, seemingly? They're just certifying things to a much, much higher standard. They're aiming a lot higher on human safety and redundancy. It takes a lot of effort to really be able to do that. You do notice, you can kind of see right now on screen, there's the inflatables that stable one, upright, as it should be. We just heard on the comm. Sorry if you didn't hear that, but yeah, stable one, which means upright. Again, it could have landed in a certain orientation because of those inflatables. It won't be unstable, still be recoverable. Yeah.
At 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, west of Baja, California, after a textbook entry for the Orion spacecraft bringing its 25-and-a-half-day mission to an end.
The crewed reentry will also be at the same velocity. It's very similar. Basically, when you're coming back from the moon, the way they were coming back actually was technically a little bit faster. They were pushing it a little bit harder. This is the primary mission, was to, test the heat shields to reentry. It obviously survived reentry, which is fantastic. So primary mission complete. Getting the vehicle back at this point now and onto the ship, which should be relatively easy. They're going to wait 2 hours, by the way, before they go and recover it. They want to actually offload a ton of data and let the temperatures, all of the sensors actually sit there and read out during this period right now. And then they'll go and recover it after a 2-hour period. So not much is going to happen. We will see some boats kind of getting near it, but they won't begin recovery operations for 2 full hours. And so that's just so they can offload data, make sure all the sensors, you know, they just want to make sure they have everything recorded, data logged before they go and touch it and, you know, jostle it about or do anything with it, even anything that could affect even the temperatures. So right now, some of the things they're seeing is, you know, how quickly do all of the temperature sensors match as it's, you know, cooling off? Are they all in the same range of values? Is everything, you know, in family with each other? So they want to have plenty of time, because otherwise, if there is a discrepancy, say one temperature sensor, you know, cooled off much quicker, they didn't want to have to introduce a you know, recovery or something and then go and pick it up. And then they're like, well, shoot, was that one sensor getting weird when we recovered it? Or was it always weird throughout the whole flight and we just now realized it? So that's why they're just letting it sit there, do its thing, give it, and then they'll go recover it after 2 hours. Yeah. Ooh.
Respectful of that, it is in stable 1 configuration in good shape according to the recovery team.
So actually one of the 5 inflatable bags.
Word that all 5 of the crew module uprighting system bags are fully inflated. So that's exactly what we had hoped for. Orion safely bobbing up and down in the Pacific Ocean.
Cool. Okay, so those uprighting inflatables, they had a report for a second that there was only 4 of the 5 deployed. Then they just got confirmation actually that all 5 were okay. So thank you, Curious Gamer, for 11 months of membership. Much, much appreciated. Astronaut badge. I don't know. Will I be able to call myself an astronaut? I actually, yeah, I don't know where I stand on that still today. I've always kind of thought that it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really matter. I've always thought an astronaut by definition is kind of a space sailor, you know, someone that travels in space. I don't care if you're a professional astronaut. I think that's a different thing. You know, it should be like, are you, I think, you know, there's obviously a lot more training. A career astronaut is totally a different thing than someone on a joyride like I will basically be doing around the moon. The utmost respect for people that work in space, but I think they're almost, to me, astronaut is it's literally a general term for someone that trains and controls a spacecraft, basically. But nowadays, training is becoming shorter and shorter, you know, much easier. I 100% think that Jared Isaacman is an astronaut, without question. The man trained for a long time. He controlled a spacecraft. In the future, though, it's gonna, I don't know, it just gets blurrier and blurrier. So I think there needs to be almost a delineation between professional astronaut and astronaut. And then, you know, space tourist. Like I think suborbital, if you're in space for 4 minutes, that to me is a little bit different than if you're in orbit. I might just have to call myself a lunarnaut at some point. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the whole thing. I think it's all kind of silly personally. But yeah. Thank you so much, Park the Forg. Keep making great videos. I am so close to being done with a 17-page now, I think, script on how to start rocket engines. I'm really, really, really excited about this video. I hope you guys are too. We're going to be shooting it this week and editing it as quickly as we can. But the editing is going to be really hard because the animations have to have. We're going to be doing literally like valve by valve of how the RS-25, the Space Shuttle main engine, or the engine that was on SLS, literally we're going to go valve by valve how that rocket engine starts and why. So it gets really, really, really deep, and we're going to have to animate like literally just every little thing so you can visually see and understand how and why and what that things are affecting and how it's, you know, going forward into the next phase. And literally it's like a 6.5 second long process basically between initial startup phase and full engine ignition up to operating power levels. So it's quite a long thing, but that whole segment of just running you through those valves and stuff is going to be like a 10-minute thing at the end of the video. So after we teach you all the different ways to start a rocket engine, all the techniques of how to start a rocket engine, you know, bootstrapping and COPVs and all these different spin start methods and things like that, then we're going to walk you through the startup method of the Merlin vacuum engine and of the RS-25. And it's going to be like, I'm really excited about this. I get excited about videos when I learn a ton. Because I don't know. I mean, I think I generally know a decent amount of stuff about spaceflight, like a kind of wide but not very deep knowledge base on general spaceflight things. This is one of those topics I kind of thought I understood a decent amount about how to start a rocket engine. Then I started reading some books. I literally read 2 full books now. That helped quite a bit, and talked to some experts, again, as I tend to do. I learned a ton. I learned like so much more than I thought. Starting a rocket engine is honestly by far the hardest. Getting a rocket engine up and running is 99% of everything. If you figure that out, then the rest of everything else is and that is what like takes so much time and energy and effort from a company, is when they're trying to just get their developmental rocket engine through the startup phase, and it's very difficult. So once you start seeing like, oh, we had an 8-second duration burn, at that point they're pretty much done. You know, if you can get into a stable state of operation, it's easy. I like how the ship had turned, and so the camera looking at it was just looking at let's see here. Ted's Fix It. The pointy end is up and the flamey end is down. Yes, it was. It was very much so. Thank you so much for that. Thank you too much, Mitch Radio, for becoming a member. I appreciate that. And something we, for some reason, can't see from James Bow. Thank you so much. Trenton, let's see. I was on one of the red crew members for launch of Artemis-1. Thanks for all you do to the world of spaceflight. You are awesome. Trenton, the hero of this mission, one of the heroes of this mission. Can you guys believe that? I don't know if you guys remember, but during the launch of Artemis-1, the red crew, three members of the red crew had to go out onto the launch pad while the vehicle was rocket and fix a leak in part of the ground system interface. That is so cool. Everyone, we have the opportunity to say thank you to Trenton. That is so cool. Like, that is awesome. I love the internet. This is why I love, that's just so awesome. Thank you again for making that mission possible. That's really, really cool. Dang. I love that. Thank you. Seriously, sincerely. Look at it. What a flawless mission. This mission, again, I think people have occasionally, express, rightfully so, sometimes frustrations on timeline slips and expenses. But when you see an absolute A+ mission like this, where everything went completely right despite a hurricane, despite some major schedule shifts and major things, uphill battles. At the end of the day, like, if you're going to be putting astronauts back on there, more astronauts, 4 astronauts, in this day and age where you really don't have margins and you care so much about human safety. No offense to the Apollo astronauts, but I just don't even think anyone understood the risks quite like we do today. So yeah, I mean, this is what matters, is seeing the safe return of a crew vehicle like this, and knowing that humans are going to be on it next. Like, yeah, that's really cool. Jeff Stucco, do we know if Orion was storing 4K footage of I assume, the mission? I'm not actually sure if what all was recorded in 4K. I hope. We are definitely well within the era of 4K footage. I really, really hope so, but I can't confirm, unfortunately. I feel like, but they're definitely storing local footage for sure. Like, on board, there is local recordings as well. I know that for a fact. Thank you to Caroline for becoming a member. I appreciate that. We just did a supporter live stream yesterday, by the way. So if you are a Patreon supporter or a YouTube member, we try to do about once a month-ish updates. We also do script read-throughs for some of the higher tiers as well. So if you are a Patreon supporter, we'll be doing another script read-through here pretty soon in Discord. So, if you're a Pilot Plus or a Commander, you'll do script read-throughs with us in the Discord channel, which are super fun. Because I love the script read-throughs because it's kind of it becomes a conversation. It's like I'm reading through and then we'll stop almost every couple paragraphs or so and have any questions. And those periods of time where there's kind of that open back and forth dialogue and people get to question, the script, question, some of the physics or, whatever we're talking about, is I think what makes the videos substantially better, because all of a sudden you get that feedback loop of, I didn't understand this. Can you explain why you said this, this, this? And it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't explain that very well, did I? And especially I love, the point of my videos is to make it so anybody, regardless of your background and your current knowledge base, hopefully can enjoy and learn something about rocket science. I truly believe that by teaching people stuff, answering their kind of questions that are in the back of their head that they don't even know where to begin looking for those answers, I really think when you start answering those questions, it just becomes addictive, and you really, really, really can fall in love with the topic and just have a genuine enthusiasm about it when you understand it a lot better. And also you get to respect and cheer for the people that work on this stuff. You know, that's kind of the whole point of what I do, is make it so that you guys are excited about the stuff as well. So I think that, you know, and you get excited for the people working on these missions, the people designing the spacecraft, the people, behind the scenes that are crunching data and running numbers and double checking everything. I mean, there's loads of work and sleepless nights for a lot of people in these missions. And I really think by having some understanding of what the process is, like the 10 minutes we're going to explain, the 6 seconds of startup, it makes you really appreciate all the hard work that goes into all that stuff. So yeah, that's just a friendly reminder that if you're, that we should be doing probably another script read through here very soon and shooting, and then we'll be getting feedback after the video is edited down to its dialogue cut, and then probably another feedback. There's a lot of feedback in our videos, and that's something I believe is very important in order to make them as best as possible. Yep. Home again. Yeah, baby. Absolutely amazing.
In the Pacific Ocean, having splashed down at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, around 5 nautical miles or so from the USS Portland, a textbook entry for the vehicle. On the USS Portland at this hour, my colleague Daryl Nell from the Kennedy Space Center, who's with the Exploration Ground Systems Recovery Team. Daryl, how did it look to you? It certainly looked textbook to.
Does anyone know what's the big bit of steam to the left? Like, is there a helicopter just hovering there? Or what is that? Is there a boat doing donuts? I just can't tell what that is. Was anyone paying attention? Okay, you can see a boat over there kicking up some waves and some spray. But what is kicking up that much spray over there? I just can't. I've been looking at that for several minutes. Is anybody... Godzilla. A dude in a jet ski. Oh, it could have been the flare. Yeah, it could have been a smoke marker. Very good call. Okay, that's definitely what it is. Yeah, I thought it was rotor wash too. I was like, where? But I don't see that helicopter. It definitely a flare, I'll bet. That's with some of the hardware.
Next to the capsule. Now the helicopters that you see flying there, those are MH-60s. We have 2 of them in the air, and they are right now gathering high quality, high definition imagery of the capsule in the water. There's a spotter aboard. We have photographers as well. The doors are completely open on both sides of the helicopters, and so you can see them flying a circular track around the splashdown location. They have marked, if you can see it, you can see what looks like smoke coming off a location just to the left there. That is the boats having marked location where some of the debris has come down, the debris that was part of the separation event, the part of the parachutes opening event. So you have the sabot as well as the lid from the parachutes. All of that is being tracked by the Sasquatch team, and the Navy boats are marking that with floatable smoke grenades.
There we go. That answers that.
All of that hardware the team wants to recover because there's valuable information and data in it. The helicopters will be out for another 20 minutes gathering imagery. You can see one of them getting very close to the crew module. There is an GSS camera, ultra high definition, 8K, which is gathering imagery. We are currently on course to go right by the splashdown location, so we are right about 3.5 miles and closing We are going to a point that's going to be 1 mile out. That's our next waypoint.
1.6 kilometers.
The splashdown location. One of the things we're waiting for is for ammonia boil-off. And that's why the Navy boats are not yet next to the capsule. We're still going to wait that out. The amount of time that that's going to take is has not been determined. They have allowed for as much as 2 hours. The ammonia on the capsule is used for cooling purposes, to keep the cabin cool for crew. Of course, there's no crew in this capsule, but for future missions, it will certainly be an important part of keeping the astronauts cool during the heat of reentry. But for now, they're going to vent off that ammonia, and as they do that, it's not quite safe to get close to the capsule with the Navy divers.
There's another reason why they don't approach the vehicle for a long time.
So of course we'll keep our eyes fixed to the location, our cameras as well. The USS Portland's standing by for our next waypoint, 1 mile from the splashdown site. And then once the completion of the ammonia boil-off, the Navy boats will be going in.
Yep, great news. I'm going to get through a few more of your questions, and I'm probably going to head out because, I mean, at this point, I saw what I wanted to see, which is re-entry and the safe recovery of the vehicle. But I just want to say again, sorry for, I know there's some audio glitches, and I know it's probably a horrible experience. I have no idea why. Literally, we did just do our Patreon stream yesterday, so I don't know why it would be bad today. So I do apologize, but let's get through a few more questions, and I'm probably going to head out, like I said, but thank you guys, too, so much for hanging out with me today. Mitch Radio, thanks for the height and speed conversions that help. Sorry if they're not always accurate. I try to just do it off the top of my head always, but I've gotten pretty good at it over the years, I think, just on the fly trying to convert speed and height conversions, just because, yeah, it really frustrates me that, you know, I guarantee over half of our audience, when they say we're 600 feet from something, have no relative sense of that at all. So, yeah, I definitely think it's important to give the more common conversions. It's funny, people get, like, mad at me on YouTube. It's hilarious. Like, how dare you? You're American. How dare you use the metric system? We use imperial here. Like, they actually get, like, upset. Like, it's some pride thing. It's like, no, I'm just literally using the most common system of measurement. Like, has nothing to do with America. That's just good old America stubbornism to me. If you can't handle someone using the metric system with an imperial conversion on screen, by the way, I always do the imperial conversion on screen, yet people get so upset that I'm talking in metric. It's like, it all makes sense. Meter, there's X amount of meters. There's always tens divisible by 10. Like, that is so much better than 12 feet or 12 inches in a foot and 3 feet in a yard. And, just so stupid. And how many, I don't even remember. It's like 5,000 something feet in a mile. Just absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. So sorry for the rant, but yeah, it's important for me to try to at least make some kind of conversion because metric just actually makes sense. Thank you so much, Andres. This is cool. Jamie Williams, at Goonhilly, we've been supporting Orion comms with our commercial deep space antenna in Cornwall. That's super cool. That the UK is also, you know, this is such an international thing, especially with the European service module as well. Let's see. Do I think Artemis will be able to get a human on the moon by 2025, considering how slow Starship is taking? I personally doubt it because I definitely think 2025 is off the table for many reasons. Eric Berger recently made what people thought was like a salacious article. I thought it was just kind of a great opinion. And he was basically saying that he has someone, a trusted friend, an insider that is guessing in 2028. Like, that was their opinion. I kind of think that too. I would love, as long as we get humans on the moon before the end of this decade, I'll be happy. I know it feels like it's a lot slower again than the Apollo program. It is. But it's also a lot safer and a lot more ambitious, a lot bigger, a lot more powerful, a lot more everything. So, yeah. So I think 2025 is completely off the table. There's almost no chance, in my opinion, that humans will be walking on the moon again in 2025 from the United States. And it would be quite a big shock if China had developed all the systems by then too. I think there is actually potential for a bit of a race if it does slip to the end of the decade. I think there's a decent chance that China will be getting close to putting humans on the moon, taikonauts on the moon by the end of the century, maybe. They're ramping up pretty quick, doing some big things. I think that's Team Space or TSM Space. Thank you so much for your donation. I really appreciate it. From Erkin saying 28 months of membership, knowing how to start up a rocket engine might be useful in case of real interplanetary spacecraft emergency. Kind of. There's only so much you can do, even if like you knew there was an issue with an engine. Like if an engine decides not to work, so that's the cool thing is like these days there's so many sensors that if something is not going right during the startup process, normally the engines are smart enough to be able to shut down and prevent catastrophic explosions from happening. But what do you do then? Okay, it didn't start. Now we're flying by Mars. Like, go do an EVA and then like replace the fuel preburner igniter. You know, like it's just I don't know how much that's realistic to like have the knowledge of in an emergency. Honestly, not to burst your bubble, but like I did see some people be like, "Good thing you're working on starting a rocket engine in case something you need that knowledge on Dear Moon." Like I just can't imagine a situation where that information would actually be helpful, honestly. Obviously, like during entry and relanding, those engines are going to light within the last like 30 seconds of landing. So you're not going to get out of the vehicle and be like, well, let me just quick replace this spark igniter here, But what is the radius around Orion? What is it, 5 meters? We have graphics of that somewhere, but I don't know where they are. I believe it's 5 meter wide, if I recall. 5 meters? Now I gotta look it up. Artemis versus Apollo. Let's see. Okay. Yep, the width is 5 meters. The Apollo capsule is 3.9. 9 meters cubed of habitable volume versus 6 meters cubed, so it's 50% larger inside. Yeah. All right, let's keep going here. Interesting. From Marcel Mayer says, one of the people I know worked on the BE-1 engine and is the ordnance administrator of Boeing. Any questions you have for me to relay to him? BE-1, I'm not even sure if I know what the BE-1 engine is. BE-1. Unless it's like Blue Origin's engine. But the Boeing part confused me. Maybe they did work on the BE-1 originally. But I think there was... Interesting. I can't think of any off the top of my head, and probably not questions that they could answer publicly. But thank you for that little tip there, Marcel. That's pretty cool. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Liz McQuaid says, thank you so much for covering this. Much more fun watching through you. Well, I appreciate that. I always want to just make sure we're having fun here and hoping to answer questions as best as I can. Scott, thank you so much for becoming a member. Let's see. This is as a crew member of Dear Moon, will we go through some training on how to control the vehicle? You'd be predestined because of your knowledge. I hope so. I really would like to step up and offer myself to be, trained additionally to be able to be, able to handle being a pilot on the mission potentially. Or I don't know if there will be a commander, to be honest. I expect the whole vehicle to more or less be completely autonomous. So I'm not entirely sure what the commander role is or how that's going to work in this environment when it's, such a tourist type of thing, Back in the day, there were talks of there being professional astronauts on board. I have not heard anything about that anymore. I don't know if that would still maybe be the case. But I would I'll take up any responsibility, any option I have to train further, to further my own knowledge and just, I even look forward to the challenge of, having just the mental challenge of training and things like that too. So I would love to just take it on. Even like the discipline aspect of I have to sit and read this whole book. All right. Warriston, in regards to will you qualify as an astronaut? Does the medical officer on the ISS qualify as an astronaut? That person has a job in space. Yours will be to document and share experience. So yes, you qualify, in my opinion. I don't know. That's going to be a thing that I'm sure I answer and hear way too much is, are you an astronaut? And it's like, I don't know how to answer that. I'll just say, well, I went to the moon. You determine whether or not that makes me an astronaut for yourself, I guess. But I would love to be, like I just said, I would love to be able to become a pilot and train additionally, if at all possible. I am really close to having my personal private pilot's license. But, you know, I would love to train as much as I could, and not so that I have the moniker of astronaut or anything at all, but just I would love nothing more than to actually be in control of a spacecraft at some point. Like, that would be very, very, very cool. Sue, thank you so much for becoming a member. Same with Vins for becoming a member. Let's see. Thank you so much to Wes. What can you tell us about the ongoing recovery process of this mission? Not much other than they have to wait 2 hours, and we're at T plus 30 minutes. So they're currently, like they said, offloading some ammonia from the cooling loop. They're also offloading data, getting imagery of the vehicle while they wait to go and recover it. So, yeah. Hopefully that answers your question, but thank you so much. Granddad Rocket, congrats on Dear Moon. Looking forward to the engine start video. Thank you. Dear Moon, in my opinion, like, that's still, honestly, just being completely candid with you, like, I'm not even really thinking too much about it. Obviously, this week with the announcement, like, I'm thinking a lot more about it just because it's public now and people are coming up to me and asking me about it every time I go somewhere at this point now. You know, I'm still very focused on what I'm doing now and the next things. And for me right now, literally, like, in the now is working on how to start a rocket engine video. But the next thing that I'm really, really looking forward to is the launch of Starship, the orbital launch attempts. You better believe I'll be covering those better than I ever, or trying harder than I've ever tried before. So we've got some good systems. We just did buy a really, really, really high-end encoder that's going to make sure that we are streaming with the utmost reliability for these upcoming Starship missions, and I cannot wait for that. So, Interesting, Joe. You mentioned the helicopters. They didn't mention that on the stream, but that also makes sense. Joe saying the spray is a smoke we drop to tell the winds from our helicopter. That makes sense too. Closer to, but you know, they mentioned on air that they're marking some of the recovery hardware, the hardware they want to recover, that may, you know, potentially sink, so they can go in. But it also would make sense that they would drop markers there to make sure they know the wind direction of the rotor wash and things like that. I can't confirm whether or not Joe for sure is someone that is going to be on the deck of Artemis-2, so I do have to take that with a little, no offense, a little grain of salt there. But that actually makes sense, and I think we have seen that in recovery missions before, where they drop a smoke signal so you can make sure you know what the rotor wash is doing. Yeah. Tommy wants to say, can we have some merch with you as Morpheus with an RS-25 in one hand and a Raptor in the other? That sounds terrible. No offense. That's funny though. Bobby saying, Trent Ennis, Billy Cairns, and Chad Garrett are the members of the Red Crew from Artemis-1 mission. These guys are heroes most will never know about. Let's give them a shout out and a spotlight. Absolutely. I agree. That was crazy. I was blown away during the Artemis-1 mission when they went out and actually fixed the infrastructure in the middle of the fuel up process and made that mission a success. So, so cool. Mitch Radio from Singapore would like to go to the U.S. in 2024 for our first time to watch the crewed Artemis launch. Any tips on what to prepare? Thanks. Yes. Okay. This, more than anything, plan this trip as late as possible. Plan this trip and buy the tickets and everything as close to the launch date as possible. And I'm talking weeks, not months, weeks. Best of all, within a week, honestly. I know that's hard. I know that's stressful. I know that seems, it might be more expensive. Sometimes actually, I've noticed I book flights literally day before almost every time lately. Like I don't remember the last time. A week maybe is like really early for me these days, just because I never know where I'm going to be, pulled around to. So I know it seems, and there is the risk of it being more expensive or their flights not being available and stuff, especially when you're trying to travel from Singapore. But trust me, the last thing, either do that, like book it as late as possible, and then give yourself absolutely as much time as you possibly can. You will know the launch window opportunities. Make sure you're staying through the whole launch window. If you're going to do this, clear out the 3-week, launch opportunity window, and book it as late as possible, because you just never know until the vehicle's on the pad. I would say that would be your cue. It would be vehicle on the pad with an upcoming launch date and everything's on track, because that's normally about 2 weeks out. I would not even book a flight and look at hotels until that has happened. Otherwise, there's just a really good chance if you think, oh, in 2 months they're saying it's going to launch, how many times would that rug have been pulled out from underneath you? So I know it's probably going to cost more. Maybe get a cheaper flight, or work on a cheaper flight option, work on a worse hotel option or something, or a cheaper Airbnb or something. Stay further away or whatever it takes. But make sure you get that whole launch window and you book it as late as possible, because you're going to want all those opportunities. The good thing is if it takes off on the first launch opportunity, you have 2 extra weeks in Florida, it's not the worst place to be. Especially if Singapore, you're not going to be coming from anywhere with much worse weather, obviously. But there's so many cool things to do in the area, and obviously, Disney World and all the things, the attractions of Orlando, not a bad place to be. So that is definitely my advice. Sue Ellen Dollar, thank you so much. And Granddad Rocket, thank you for becoming a member, as well as Marcel for becoming a member. In the chat, metric system for the win. Thank you so much. Daryl Wright, holy cow. Thank you so much, Daryl. Thanks for all your hard work, Tim. You're an inspiration to so many. We're all so happy for your success and enjoy watching your career grow so fast. Stay the same humble, enthusiastic guy you've always been. Daryl, thank you. Really, the support means the world to me. Allows me to do what I do, allows me to put all the effort that I can into the videos that I do and the live streams that we do, and the investments involved in all of that. So I just really, really appreciate that. The kind words mean a lot. I don't know about humility or anything, but for me, this is just an absolute dream come true, just to be able to pursue whatever crazy things I want and help share my experiences. And I love getting into these rabbit holes, like the How to Start a Rocket Engine video is a classic rabbit hole where, I could dive in as deep as I want, get excited about it, poke my head out, and try to help share what I learned in that process. And I love these moments of learning, and that's what makes my job so exciting. And then being able to see events, in real life and try to share those with you too is the other part that I absolutely loves. Thank you so much, Daryl. Everyone say thank you to Daryl. That is a majorly generous donation. I really appreciate it. The Rominal, congrats, Tim. You're not just an astronaut. You will legitimately be the everyday astronaut. That is, it is pretty ironic. This was not in the cards. People often think, Tim, you did it. You fulfilled your dream. And honestly, this has never been the dream, never been the goal or the plan. This is not what I set out to do with Everyday Astronaut at all. 3 years ago, there's probably someone someday is going to make a compilation of all the times Tim Dodd said he'll never go to space. And they're going to look over all my live streams and stuff where I get asked, would you ever go to space? And I'm like, no. Yet here I am accepting a ride to the moon. It's never been and genuinely, I'm not just doing the thing where no, please don't take me to space. And then I turn off the stream. I'm like, ha 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 ha, I'm getting closer. It just really hasn't been a goal of mine growing up or anything. It has changed in the most recent years. Specifically, it's changed a lot because of, just making sure I'm not missing anything. It changed a lot, especially Bob and Doug, watching them fly on Dragon and the great success of that. Seeing Inspiration 4 was another big milestone of, wow, this can happen to an average person. People that I know, I had met Cyan before and, spoke with her previously and, familiar with her. So just seeing someone that I knew previously going into space kind of clicked again, another level of that. Obviously, Inspiration 4 was pretty far into the selection process of Dear Moon. We at that point had known that we're in the selection process, I did get very emotional during the Inspiration 4 mission because I think that reality was sinking in that there's a decent chance that I would potentially be flying. So look at that image. That is awesome. So cool to see that. Yeah, absolutely crazy. Interesting. He's saying, wait, you can't super chat because kids only, but you just did super chat. That's confusing. H-Plan in our Discord. Touche. Calling me out in Patreon says Tim, colon, or in Discord it says this, but on this is a Patreon reference. Tim, colon, it's never been the goal. And then Patreon goal going like this because I did, and this was a total joke when I did it because it was like part of the Everyday Astronaut thing. Like when I first started Patreon, it was Everyday Astronaut was an art project of me running around in this old spacesuit, right? So I thought it'd be the ultimate joke. Like literally it wasn't a thing I wanted to do. I even said that. It was the goal of like at 10,000 patrons, I'll buy a ride to space. I'm terrified to do it, but I'd do it for you guys. Like it was totally like a tongue-in-cheek thing. Like thinking there's no way possible. And at the time, 10,000 patrons seemed like an impossibility. It just seemed like this, like, I got to make some ridiculous goal. Kind of like the Pepsi jet thing. You know, collect 7 million Pepsi points and get a Harrier jump jet. That was my version of it. Like 10,000 members and I'll buy a ride to space, you know. But that is hilarious. I do promise, you guys have heard me talk about it plenty. I mean, yeah. What is the security radius for the Ocean Splashdown? The corridor is not very wide, but they do have a full like exclusion zone similar to a launch, similar to any other reentry of a spacecraft, or even, you know, there's boosters that reenter often or upper stages that reenter. There's basically like a graveyard in the Indian Ocean where there's a big swath after a launch. Oftentimes there'll be a NOTAM, a notice to airmen, and the whatever the marine version of that is, where boats and planes are kept out of that exclusion zone because there would be reentry and a very small chance of debris reentering and injuring a member of the public. Very, very small chance if you're in that zone. But this, especially with the recovery operations, it's even more, you know, serious. You have a lot of planes and a lot of helicopters and a lot of activity with boats and things that you don't want anything interfering with these recovery operations, as well as the safety potential for, you know, debris. I mean, even think about if a drogue chute, after it gets jettisoned, is still coming down and an airplane, you know, wasn't paying attention, looking around at what is all this crazy stuff, and they ran into the drogue chutes. Like, got to make sure that corridor is cleared off, and that is part of the range. Thank you, Aiden, for becoming a member. Much appreciated. All 3D design and animation. I appreciate the chat or the donation. Vins says Space Nut, 2 boys, one a CPA, the other airborne drill instructor. Never been in anything kid involved. Why can't I chat? I don't get why you're saying that. I'm seeing your chats. Has anyone else ever had that problem, as Vin's describing it, saying that claiming they can't super chat because it's set for kids only? Have you guys ever, anyone ever had that problem? Anybody? Let me know. I don't know if anyone else has seen that problem, because obviously it's going through. I'm seeing it, but I'm not sure. Don't be humble, Tim. You'll become the real everyday astronaut. I know. Frankly, I won't. I'm not even going to remotely accept it until I'm back home safely. Then I'll maybe strut around a little bit. Like, yeah, you better believe it. I went to the moon. Thank 18 months of membership from Pizik. Congratulations on the best ticket you could have ever won. I agree. Thank you so much. I think this is kind of the coolest, most insane opportunity, most Willy Wonka-esque thing ever. Like, hey, some guy's gonna buy 8 people a ride around the moon, and it's not a scam. Like, it's, you know, obviously been legitimized by so many people at SpaceX. They had a press conference. It's definitely a real thing. Whether how real on the timeline thing obviously is up to the whims of spaceflight and spaceflight activity and progress, as all spaceflight is. But I truly believe, obviously, that this is something that could potentially, that will be happening. Dan, thank you so much. This is from BMW 1000C, not CC, 1000C. Congrats, man. Still remember you dressed in the astronaut suit. I felt pride in your announcement. May great things come to you, my friend. You deserve it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I hope you keep this video on your channel. I'll keep this video on the channel, even though it probably sounds like crap. But thank you so much, Chelsea. Or Chesley, actually. Interesting. Chris, we snuck away from a family party to watch your coverage of Splashdown. Can we get a shout out? Matt, Big Jim, Little Jim, and CJ. Congrats on being named to the crew. Thank you so much to Chris and Matt, Big Jim, Little Jim. Awesome. Thanks for sneaking away to watch some pretty awesome progress in humans returning to the moon. Really, really appreciate it. Ted's Fix It Tech. When you go, you're taking us with you. We always wanted to see you get a chance, I think. You've done all the hard work and long hours to get there. I want to see an interview as a real astronaut with Elon after. It'd be pretty fun. It would definitely be... there's a lot of things that I can't wait to do on this mission to be able to bring it to everybody and help share it, hopefully in a way that's never been done before. We've got a lot of cool ideas. Tim Dodd, the everyday space pirate. It could happen. You're right. I could try to steal Starship and send it to Mars and then never come back. Thank you, Eric. Roderick, hi, Tim. You have to choose NDI or SDI, live view or WMT and Starship or Orion. Okay, NDI or SDI. I still prefer SDI. NDI, I don't know. I've had some pains with it being finicky. Kind of like Dante. I love Dante, but still nothing beats a good old XLR cable. You know, just plugging something straight in. Same with SDI. There's just, I don't know. Sometimes you get like syncing issues or weird little things, and all of a sudden it's like, why is this not working? And it's like, oh yeah, the router assigned the wrong IP address. It's like, I'd rather just go, so SDI. Live view or WMT. I don't even know what WMT is, but I'm going to go with live view since that's what we purchased as our encoder. We ended up with a 610S rack mount unit, which I'm really, really, really excited for. And Starship or Orion. Considering I'm going to be flying on one, and I've obviously been watching the progress of one very, very, very closely for the last, I guess, since really the BFR announcement in 2016, I gotta say Starship. Obviously, we're watching something that I've also been waiting for. Although I've been watching this, I was at EFT1 in December of 2014 when the last time Orion flew and splashed down somewhere was in 2014. So I've also been watching this quite a bit too. Today, here we go. Today I'm gonna say Orion because Orion deserves its day in the spotlight because it's just had an unbelievable mission, completely huge success. Really, really, really gotta give such big props to the Orion team, the teams that the Artemis team and SLS team that got it there safely with such precision that it used almost no maneuvering fuel like at all. Just absolutely perfect, absolutely perfect. So today Orion, in the future Starship though. I gotta cheer for my home team there, you know. Let's see. Nope, the comments about not being able to super chat reminds me of my grandma who asks, make YouTube work. Well, I mean, obviously super chat is working for people. I'm not sure why it says anything about kids. I wonder if someone's maybe they're logged into a kid account or something, or their channel accidentally is clicked as for kids or something. But I don't get it because you are able to super chat. I don't get it. Anyway, Brent Norman, do you know where Dear Moon would be in terms of crewed Starship flights? Not the first, I hope. Huge congrats on being selected. Very well deserved. Well, we know Jared Isaacman has mentioned in several interviews that Polaris 3 is planned to be the first crewed mission of Starship. I asked him about that almost a year ago, coming up, I think it was like February of last year. I had a interview with him, and I just said, hey, like, you're talking about the first crewed Starship. Are you talking about, like, taking off and then coming back down, you know, like taking off in Dragon, rendezvousing with Starship and flying around a Starship in orbit? Or are you talking about literally launching on Starship, landing on Starship? And he said, yeah, launching on Starship, landing on Starship, Polaris 3. and he says he will be the first. So obviously a LEO mission is easier than a lunar trajectory lunar flyby mission. So there's going to be, you know, some steps between Polaris 3 and Dear Moon that we'll have to see take place as well. So yeah. Let's see. Derek Gardner seems to work, but does say you can't super chat if under 18. Don't know if people have their ages set right. Congrats on Dear Moon. There we go. That's probably true. I think that's just a general YouTube thing. Thank you, Derek, for the explanation. And Ben Guy, 14 months of membership. So excited for you. Congrats. Keep up the good work and look forward to what a trip around the moon inspires you to create. I can't even begin to imagine what it's actually going to be like, honestly. This mission helped. This mission helped watching the images come back from Orion around the moon. I was kind of like, oh, I'm going to see this. Like, my eyeballs are going to actually see that. My cameras, me, I'm going to be there. That's absolutely insane to think. So it was cool timing for me, you know, watching this mission unfold, obviously knowing. So, yeah, guys, I think, honestly, I think that's going to be it. Oh, here we go. Stable 3 requires multiple CMUS, the crew, upright system or whatever it is. Thank you for that, Pete. I appreciate that. Well, guys, I'm actually gonna go ahead and tune out here. This will keep going on for another hour before a little over an hour before they actually go and begin recovery. I would like to enjoy a little bit of my Sunday, but also continue scripting and get ready for shooting a new video finally for the first time since, like, in studio here for the first time since, oh God, like May or June or something. It's been a long time. Obviously, hopefully you guys have watched. A lot of people did not watch me ride a fighter jet. It's like one of the coolest videos I've ever made, and like people just didn't watch it. Watch it. There's 8,000 of you. I want all 8,000 of you, if you're watching this, to go click on my what it's like to do fighter jet training. I literally rode in a fighter jet with the Polaris crew. Had nothing to do with Dear Moon, ironically. Like, those were completely separate things. I had the opportunity completely separately from anything related to Dear Moon. Had nothing to do, you know, Jared didn't know I was involved with Dear Moon or anything like that. Just completely separate. Went and trained for a day and rode in a fighter, not trained, but rode in a fighter jet with the Polaris Dawn crew. Watch that. There's some great interviews, great insights on fighter jet training, great insights on landing the space shuttle that I learned. A lot of fun little tidbits there. You know, you guys know me. I never just make a video that's fluff. So even though it might not be a studio setting and it might seem different and scary and not as much about spaceflight, I guarantee it's still about spaceflight. You'll still learn a lot. It's one of my favorite videos. Yeah. But that, all right, I think, guys, yeah. Oh, interesting. Wait, why? Oh, Vins is saying they can't chat. Maybe, here's what it is. Vins, I know what's wrong. To avoid spam, one of the things that we're doing now, YouTube has it so you have to be subscribed. If you're not subscribed, you can't super chat. It's to help avoid bots. You'll notice actually our chat is super, like, bot free, and that's why. So I appreciate you super chatting the questions, but the answer is make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and then you should be able to chat. I think you might have to be subscribed for a certain amount of time, like again, a minute or 5 minutes. And again, that's to help prevent spams and bots. But hopefully, yeah, because you don't see like crypto links and stuff like that all the time. We have it's harder for bots to do all that stuff. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully that fixes it. I expect to see Vins in the next 5 minutes chatting in the non-super chats. And yeah. All right. Well, my friends, I think that's going to do it for me. I think we deserve ticker tape parade on this one, right? We deserve a good old ticker tape parade exit. Thank you so much for watching with me. Sorry again if things weren't perfect. I don't know why things weren't sounding perfect. I try to reset things as much as possible. But I really appreciate all the love and support. And thank you again for all the kind words about Dear Moon. Everyone in chat, please say congratulations, not to me for Dear Moon. That's still a long ways out. We have to thank and congratulate NASA and the teams at Artemis-1, the Orion teams, the SLS teams for such a flawless mission huge congratulations. NASA knocked it out of the park. Fantastic. So glad to see this going well, because the success of this mission was necessary to be able to get humans back to the moon as soon as humanly possible. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it, everybody. That's going to do it for me. I'm Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, bringing space down to Earth for everyday people, and in the near future, quite literally, we'll be doing that. That might have to be my new sign off from now on. All right, bye, everybody.